It happened on a Thursday. The kind of Thursday that felt cursed from the moment Emily Walker stepped into the glossy lobby of Langford Enterprises. The sky was gray, the traffic had been hell, and the moment she walked through the glass doors, she knew her boss was going to be in one of those moods. What she didn't know was that by the end of that day, she would do something so bold, so wildly out of character, that it would leave her arrogant, untouchable boss, Vivian Langford, absolutely stunned. It started with a slammed folder. "Is this a joke to you?" Vivian's voice sliced through the air like a scalpel. Her heels clicked sharply as she paced behind her desk, eyes ablaze with that particular fire that only lit when something didn't go exactly her way. Emily stood her ground. "Excuse me?" she asked, tone deceptively calm. Vivian turned sharply. She looked like she belonged on the cover of a magazine, tailored navy suit hugging her like it had been sewn directly onto her body, jet black hair pulled back into a sleek bun, lips painted a shade of red that could crush empires. She was breathtaking and infuriating. "You double-booked my 2 p.m. with Donovan Group and the Thai investors," Vivian snapped, tossing the planner on the desk like it burned her fingers. "You think I have time for this kind of amateur mistake?" Emily felt her jaw clench. "That's not what happened. You told me to push the Donovan meeting to today because your dinner with them last week got canceled." "No," I said next Thursday. "You didn't." "I did. I have the email." "Then you misread it." Emily stared at her. Vivian stared right back. There was again that spark, that unbearable electric tension between them. It wasn't new. It had been simmering for months, under every clipped command. "Hey, if you're enjoying this story, go ahead and drop a like to help us grow even more. And let me know in the comments, on a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story so far? Your feedback makes all the difference. Every snide comment, every glance that lingered a second too long. The worst part? Vivian knew it. She used it like a weapon. And Emily was done. "You know what?" Emily said quietly, voice tight. "I've worked under you for 3 years. I've taken your mood swings, your impossible deadlines, your passive-aggressive compliments, and your complete disregard for anyone who isn't holding a 7-figure portfolio." Vivian folded her arms, eyebrow arched. "Are you done?" Emily stepped closer.
No.
Not even close. And then she did it. She leaned in, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her ears, and whispered, "You think you're untouchable, Vivian, but you're not. You're lonely, and it's killing you." Vivian blinked. Just once. But Emily saw it, the flicker. That split second where something cracked behind those cold, calculating eyes. And before she could second-guess it, Emily did the unthinkable. She kissed her. Soft, firm, deliberate. A kiss not born out of love, but defiance. A kiss that said, "I see you." And then she pulled away, turned on her heel, and walked out of the office. Silence thundered behind her. The entire executive floor stood frozen, jaws unhinged, like someone had paused the world. And Vivian Langford, stone-cold, heartless CEO, was left standing behind her desk, lips parted, fingers twitching at her side, shaken to her core. Emily didn't stop walking. Not when the elevator doors closed behind her. Not when the cold air slapped her face outside the building. And not when she reached her car and sat in stunned, trembling silence. What had she just done? 3 years of discipline, blown apart in one moment of raw, explosive clarity. But even through the panic, something darker coiled in her chest. Satisfaction.
Power.
And a deep, undeniable thrill. Because for the first time in 3 years, Vivian Langford was no longer the one in control. Vivian Langford didn't move. Not for a full minute after Emily Walker walked out of her office like a storm wrapped in heels and defiance. Her staff watched her from behind glass walls, pretending to work, fingers frozen on keyboards, ears straining for the sound of the fallout. But there was only silence. Vivian stood still, the ghost of that kiss burning on her lips like a brand. Her breath had caught in her throat the second it happened. Not because of shock. Vivian didn't get shocked. She broke mergers before breakfast. She signed off on multi-million-dollar decisions while drinking espresso. But that kiss, it rattled something deeper, something buried, and it terrified her. She finally exhaled and turned away from the glass, reaching for the back of her chair with a grip that betrayed how badly her hands were shaking. This wasn't acceptable. Emily Walker was her secretary, her employee, her subordinate, and she had just kissed her. In front of everyone. She should have fired her on the spot. She should have marched into HR, drafted the termination papers, and reminded everyone in that damn building who was in charge. But she didn't. Instead, she sat down slowly, staring at the planner Emily had left behind. The page was still open to today's schedule, her neat handwriting mocking the chaos she'd just unleashed. Vivian stared at it like it might offer answers. It didn't. It only reminded her how many times she'd made Emily stay late. How many weekends she'd called her in. How many unnecessary tasks she'd given her just to keep her close, just to have a reason to hear her voice, to feel her presence in the room. And now Emily was gone. Maybe for good. Across the city, Emily was in her apartment, pacing. The kiss had replayed in her mind on an endless loop all afternoon, all night, into the early hours of the morning. She wasn't stupid. She knew exactly what she'd done. And now that the adrenaline had faded, it left a gaping silence inside her. What had possessed her? 3 years of professionalism, of swallowing her words, of letting Vivian's sharp tongue cut through her daily, and in one moment of fury and clarity, she'd shattered the wall between them. She had kissed her. Not just kissed her, claimed her. And God, the look on Vivian's face. That split second of vulnerability, of heat. Emily knew she'd seen it. She wasn't hallucinating. Vivian Langford might have been the most emotionally armored woman she'd ever met, but behind those eyes, there was something raw, something desperate, something that looked an awful lot like hunger. The next morning, Vivian arrived at the office before sunrise. She needed control, needed to remind herself of who she was. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, and for the first time in 3 years, Emily's desk was empty. No fresh coffee waiting. No morning itinerary printed. Just silence. Vivian stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty chair like it had personally offended her. She clenched her jaw and walked into her office. She had meetings stacked all morning, emails to return, decisions to finalize. She would not think about the kiss. She would not think about Emily. But she couldn't focus. Every time she tried to read a contract, her mind wandered to Emily's voice. Every time she checked her phone, her fingers hovered over Emily's number. And every time someone said, "Ms. Langford," she heard it in Emily's tone. By noon, she was unraveling. She slammed her pen down and leaned back in her chair, eyes burning holes into the ceiling. She hated this. Hated how much power Emily had taken in that one move. Hated how much she felt. Emily, meanwhile, had dressed for war. Pencil skirt, silk blouse, blazer sharp enough to slice through steel. She'd spent the entire night deciding whether to quit, run, or pretend it never happened. But none of those options sat right. She didn't want to disappear. She wanted answers. And maybe, just maybe, she wanted to watch Vivian squirm. So she walked back into Langford Enterprises at 12:47 p.m., head high, spine straight, heels tapping out a deliberate rhythm of vengeance. The second she stepped onto the floor, silence fell like a curtain. Everyone turned. Whispers flickered like sparks. But Emily ignored them all. She walked straight to her desk, turned on her computer, and resumed her duties like nothing had happened. Vivian heard the sound of her typing before she saw her. It was unmistakable, efficient, calm, taunting. She stood up too fast and nearly knocked over her coffee. She yanked open her door. Emily. Emily looked up all business. "Yes, Ms. Langford?" Her voice was steady, unreadable. Vivian stared at her. "My office." "Now." Emily stood, smoothed her skirt, and followed her in. Vivian closed the door behind her with more force than necessary. "You don't get to waltz in here after what you did and pretend nothing happened." Emily tilted her head. Should I have stayed home and cried instead? You crossed a line. So fire me. Vivian flinched. Excuse me? Fire me, Emily said calmly. Report me to HR. Call legal. Do whatever you need to feel like you're still in control. You think this is a game? I think you're scared.
Silence.
Heavy, sharp. Vivian stepped closer, furious and unsteady. You think you know me? Emily didn't back down. I know you haven't slept. I know you've replayed that moment as many times as I have. And I know that kiss didn't surprise you. It exposed you. Vivian's hands curled into fists. Watch your tone. Emily stepped closer.
Why?
You liked it. Vivian opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Emily leaned in, voice soft. I felt it. In your breath. In your body. You kissed me back. A beat.
2.
Then Vivian turned away, like the words had sliced her spine. Emily stared at her for a long, long moment. Then she stepped back. I'll be at my desk. Vivian didn't stop her this time.
Didn't speak.
Just stood there, staring out the window, the city sprawling below her, cold and impersonal and far less terrifying than the fire that had just been reignited in her chest. The air between them was never the same after that day. It had changed, thicker, heavier, laced with something neither of them could name without crossing a line they both pretended didn't exist anymore. Vivian Langford sat behind her glass desk, typing with mechanical precision, but her eyes kept darting to the monitor where Emily's calendar entries popped up in real time. She was working like nothing had happened, like she hadn't kissed her, like she hadn't invaded Vivian's perfectly ordered world and shattered it with one bold, irreversibly intimate act. Vivian hated that it haunted her, hated even more that it thrilled her. Every time, she caught a glimpse of Emily's profile beyond the glass wall, a coil of tension twisted in her gut. It wasn't just attraction, it was something darker, more dangerous. She wanted to control it, suppress it, but it pulsed under her skin with the force of something alive. She had kissed her back. That was the truth, and it echoed like a confession in every room she entered. She hadn't pushed her away, hadn't said no. She had leaned in, just slightly but enough. Enough that her lips had parted. Enough that her fingers had twitched at her side like they wanted to hold on. Vivian Langford didn't make mistakes. But Emily Walker was quickly becoming the exception to every rule. Meanwhile, Emily was on autopilot, but inside she was on fire. Every second in that office was unbearable. The scent of Vivian's perfume. The sound of her voice through the intercom. The quiet tension in meetings when their eyes met across the table and neither of them looked away. She hadn't expected Vivian to break down, but she hadn't expected her to pretend so well either. It was like nothing had changed, yet everything had. Every word was loaded. Every glance felt like a challenge. Every silence was a scream. It reached a boiling point 3 days later. They were in a private boardroom, reviewing confidential contracts for a merger that required discretion and absolute focus. Only the two of them. Emily stood across the table, tablet in hand, presenting her notes. Vivian listened with the same icy calm, but her gaze was unrelenting. Page 14 outlines the final terms. I flagged the clause about executive profit sharing. There's a discrepancy between internal compensation reports and what's listed here. Emily's voice was steady, sharp, professional. Vivian didn't respond immediately. She simply stood, walked around the table slowly, her Louboutins echoing against the hardwood floor. You've been thorough, she said finally, standing directly beside her now. Emily didn't move. It's my job. Is it?
Yes.
And I'm good at it. Vivian's voice dropped. That's not the part I'm questioning. Emily turned to face her, pulse accelerating. Then what are you questioning? Vivian's gaze dropped to her lips. Your judgment. For kissing you? For thinking you could walk away from it like it meant nothing. Emily's breath caught. Her body tensed, but she didn't look away. It didn't mean nothing. Vivian's jaw clenched. That's the problem. There was a pause, long enough for the tension to shift from thick to suffocating. You're my boss, Emily whispered. You're not supposed to want me. Vivian's eyes burned into hers. And yet I do. The silence cracked like lightning. For a moment, Emily thought Vivian would touch her. But she didn't. She pulled back like she was afraid of what might happen if she did. "We can't," she said, voice low and ragged. "We shouldn't." Emily nodded slowly. "Then say it. Say you don't want me." Vivian's lips parted, but no sound came out. She couldn't say it, because it wasn't true. Emily stepped closer, just enough to make her point. "If you can't say it, don't expect me to pretend." Vivian looked away first. And that was all the answer Emily needed. That night, Vivian sat in her penthouse apartment, glass of wine untouched, staring out over the skyline she used to find comforting. But the lights meant nothing now. The silence was deafening. She replayed every second in that boardroom. Every word Emily had said.
Say you don't want me. God, she wanted her.
Not just physically, though that part was undeniable, but something deeper. Something infuriatingly intimate. Emily knew her in a way no one else did. Knew how to get under her skin. Knew what to say to peel back the armor. And worst of all, Vivian couldn't stop her. She didn't want to stop her. Meanwhile, Emily lay in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling like it might offer answers. But all it did was reflect the same aching question: what now? She didn't regret the kiss. She didn't regret coming back. But she was tired. Tired of pretending that what passed between them was just tension. Tired of pretending that the fire wasn't mutual. She knew Vivian wanted her.
She had seen it.
Felt it. But knowing it wasn't the same as having it. And until Vivian made a choice, truly, finally, Emily wasn't going to make another move. The next day was colder. Not just the weather, but between them. Vivian barely looked at her. Emily didn't push. The games were on pause, but the energy between them was still volatile, electric, waiting for a spark. And it would come, because neither of them was built to hold back forever. Not when desire had already crossed the line. Not when longing had already turned into something neither of them could name without burning. Emily didn't expect the gala invitation. It arrived on her desk late Friday afternoon, sealed with the Langford Enterprises crest, her name written in Vivian's unmistakable handwriting, precise, elegant, commanding. She stared at it for a moment, wondering if it was a trap, a peace offering, or a power move. Probably all three. The annual Langford Foundation Gala was legendary. High society, press coverage, deals made over champagne and string quartets. Only C-level execs and their hand-picked guests attended. Secretaries weren't on the guest list. But Emily wasn't just any secretary, and Vivian wasn't just any boss. Emily opened the envelope. Inside was a single card. Black tie. No excuses. That was it. No signature. No explanation. Just an order dressed as an invitation. That night, Emily stood in front of her closet for an hour before pulling out the black dress. The one she'd never worn. Sleek, sculpted, barely legal. It was a risk, but then again, so was everything about Vivian. If she was going to be dragged into her boss's curated world, she was going to make sure Vivian felt her in every room she entered. When she walked into the ballroom, heads turned. The dress hugged every line of her body like it was molded for her. Her hair was swept into a loose updo, leaving her neck exposed, delicate gold earrings catching the soft light. But Emily wasn't looking at anyone else. Her eyes scanned until they found her.
Vivian.
Dressed in deep emerald satin that made her look otherworldly. Sharp lines, bare shoulders, lips painted like a sin waiting to happen. She was surrounded by board members, politicians, donors, but the moment she saw Emily, everything else faded. Their eyes locked across the room, and the sound of the orchestra disappeared beneath the thrum of unspoken desire. Emily smiled, subtle, dangerous. Vivian's breath hitched. She excused herself from the circle of executives without apology and made her way across the ballroom like a storm in heels. When she reached Emily, she didn't speak at first. Just looked at her. Looked through her. Like she was trying to regain the upper hand and couldn't. "You're late," Vivian said finally, voice low. Emily tilted her head. "You didn't give me a time. I expected punctuality. You invited me. You don't get to control how I show up." Vivian's eyes dropped to the curve of Emily's neck. You're doing this on purpose. What exactly am I doing? Making me lose my mind. Emily leaned in, close enough that only Vivian could hear.
Good.
Maybe then you'll finally stop pretending you don't want me. Vivian's jaw clenched. She turned sharply. Come with me. Emily followed her without question. Through the side hall, past the champagne towers, through a pair of private doors meant only for the elite. Vivian didn't stop until they were inside a private lounge, dimly lit, velvet couches, no witnesses. The door clicked shut behind them. Silence. Then Vivian turned around, fury and longing colliding behind her eyes. You think you can play games with me? I'm not playing, Emily said. I'm tired of pretending. Vivian stepped forward. You have no idea what you're doing. Yes, I do. I've watched you for 3 years. I've seen what you hide from the world. I know you're alone, and I know you're tired of it. You don't know anything about me. I know you kiss me back. I know you dream about what it would be like if we weren't pretending. I know you think of me when you're alone. Vivian reached out like she was about to grab her, then pulled back at the last second, her hand trembling. I can't, why not? Because if I start, I won't be able to stop. Emily stepped into the space between them. Then don't stop. That broke something. Vivian closed the distance, grabbing Emily's waist, backing her against the wall. Their mouths collided, hungry, desperate, full of all the things they'd never said. It wasn't gentle. It was 3 years of tension, of glances, of unspoken need poured into a single kiss that cracked them both open. Vivian's hands slid up her sides, memorizing her, claiming her. Emily moaned against her lips, arching into the touch like she'd been waiting forever. Say it, Emily whispered. Say you want me. God, I want you, Vivian breathed. I want you so much it's making me crazy. Clothes shifted, hands moved, but it wasn't about sex, not yet. It was about power and surrender. About Vivian losing the control she'd built her empire on and letting Emily see her as she was, raw, undone, human. When they finally broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, everything felt different. Fragile.
Real.
Vivian didn't speak for a long time. Then, softly, what are we doing? Emily looked at her, eyes fierce. We're finally being honest. Vivian shook her head like she was trying to wake from a dream. This can't happen again. Then stop inviting me in. Vivian stared at her and said nothing. Because she couldn't. Because she knew Emily was right. They walked out minutes later like nothing had happened, but both of them were changed. The gala continued. Laughter, dancing, polite conversation. But the fire between them had crossed a threshold, and nothing could undo it now. Vivian didn't sleep that night. She sat at the edge of her bed, hair still pinned from the gala, the emerald dress crumpled on the floor like a fallen flag. Her lipstick had faded long ago, but she could still taste Emily on her lips, sharp, warm, undeniable. She pressed her fingers to her mouth as if she could erase it. But there was no erasing it now. No undoing what had happened in that lounge. She had crossed the line. Again. And this time, she didn't hate it. She hated how much she wanted to do it again. She hated the way Emily had looked at her. Not with intimidation, not even with lust, but with something deeper. Something dangerously close to understanding. That was what terrified her the most. Vivian Langford could handle sex, attraction, even obsession. But understanding?
No.
She couldn't be understood. That was a risk she couldn't afford. Not with Emily. Not with anyone. At 5:42 a.m., she gave up on pretending sleep was possible. She dressed for work in silence. Charcoal suit, white blouse, red lipstick sharp enough to draw blood. Armor. But it didn't feel like armor today. It felt like hiding. Emily arrived exactly on time, as always. Her dress was simple, navy blue, high neckline, sleeves rolled just once at the elbows, but she walked into the office like she'd never been touched. Like her hands hadn't been on Vivian's waist. Like she hadn't gasped against her mouth in a velvet lounge with the city spinning around them. And Vivian hated her for it, because she hadn't been able to sleep. She had been replaying every breath, every whispered word. But Emily looked fine, perfectly composed, untouched. That was a lie. Emily hadn't slept either. She had gone home with her skin still tingling, her lips raw from the kiss, her heart pounding with questions she didn't want to ask. What had that been? A lapse? A mistake? Or something neither of them could name yet? But she'd known one thing when she walked into the office that morning. She wasn't going to give Vivian the power of silence.
She wasn't going to ask.
She wasn't going to act like she was waiting. If Vivian wanted more, she would have to be the one to break. Vivian didn't speak to her all morning. Meetings came and went. Emails were exchanged. Orders were given. But not one glance passed between them that lasted more than a second. Until noon. Vivian's voice came through the intercom.
Emily.
My office. Cold. Controlled. But there was a crack beneath it. Emily stood, adjusted her skirt, and walked in. Vivian was standing at the window, looking out at the skyline. Close the door, she said, without turning. Emily obeyed. The silence was long. Too long. Then, what happened at the gala can't happen again. Emily's heart dropped, but she didn't let it show. Understood. Vivian turned then, arms crossed, eyes guarded. It was a lapse in judgment. Was it? Don't do that. Do what? Make it into something it wasn't. I'm not, Emily said. But you are. Vivian's voice hardened. You work for me. I know. This isn't going to turn into some office affair. You think I'm asking for that, aren't you? Emily laughed low, bitter. You're unbelievable. You kiss me like you're starving, you whisper that you want me, and the next day you call it a lapse. Vivian's face didn't move, but her eyes gave her away. It was a mistake. No, Emily said softly, stepping closer. What we did in that lounge, pretending it was a mistake, that's the real lie. Vivian's throat tightened. This can't happen again. Emily stared at her, something colder settling behind her eyes. Then stop acting like it already hasn't. She turned and walked out, not waiting for a response. Vivian stood frozen, breath uneven, hands trembling. She had meant every word. She had to. She had rules, boundaries, reputation. But none of those things stopped her chest from aching. None of them stopped the part of her that wanted to chase after Emily. That night, Emily stayed late, on purpose. Vivian knew. She could hear her still typing after hours, the sound maddening. She told herself not to go out there, not to look. But at 7:23 p.m., she walked out of her office. Emily was alone, the entire floor silent. She looked up as Vivian approached, unreadable. Still here? Vivian asked. Someone has to hold the company together, Emily said, voice even. A beat passed. Vivian's eyes flicked to her lips, then back to her eyes. You think I'm a coward? No, Emily said. I think you're terrified. Of you. Of yourself. Vivian stepped closer. Don't pretend like this is simple. It's not. It could be, Emily whispered. If you just stop fighting it. Vivian looked at her like she wanted to scream. Or kiss her. Or both. You make me feel like I'm unraveling. Maybe that's the point. Vivian closed her eyes. You don't understand what it would cost. Then help me understand. I can't. Can't or won't. Silence. Then Vivian did something she hadn't done in years. She faltered. Just slightly. Her voice broke. I don't know how to want someone and not destroy it. Emily's expression softened, something tender flickering behind her walls. Then don't destroy this. For a second, it felt like the moment would break. Like Vivian would reach out, admit it, let go. But instead, she turned and walked away. Again. Emily sat there long after she was gone. Her chest tight, her fingers still, her heart aching. Because she had seen it. Vivian wanted her. But want wasn't enough. Not if fear was always going to win. Vivian Langford was unraveling. Slowly. Quietly. Beautifully. No one around her seemed to notice. Her staff still obeyed. The board still praised. The investors still treated her like a deity in stilettos. But inside, everything was cracking. Every email Emily sent. Every time she walked into the office, without flinching. Every meeting where she sat beside her and acted like nothing had happened. It chipped away at the walls Vivian had spent her entire adult life building. She was still composed, still poised, still the CEO who didn't flinch under pressure, but she wasn't sleeping. She wasn't eating properly. She wasn't functioning the way she used to. And it was all because of her. Emily Walker. The woman who had kissed her like she owned her. The woman who hadn't begged for forgiveness, hadn't collapsed under guilt. The woman who had looked at her afterward and said, without words, I see you. I want you, but I won't wait forever. That was the part Vivian couldn't stop thinking about. The not waiting. Because it was starting to feel like time was running out. Like if she didn't act soon, she'd lose the one thing she didn't know she needed until it was already slipping through her fingers. Emily, on the other hand, had started to change. She laughed more. She took lunch breaks. She stopped replying to Vivian's emails after 8 p.m. And for the first time in 3 years, she went out. With friends. With strangers. She let herself be looked at, touched, flirted with. Because if Vivian wasn't going to choose her, if she was too afraid to face what was between them, then Emily wasn't going to spend her life waiting in the shadows of someone else's cowardice. The first time Vivian saw her with someone else, it nearly broke her. She hadn't meant to see it. She had finished a late dinner with an investor at a downtown hotel when she spotted Emily across the street. She was laughing. Her hair was down. She was with a woman. Blonde, confident, beautiful. They were drinking wine on a rooftop terrace, leaning close, whispering things only lovers whispered. Vivian stood there like a ghost on the sidewalk, watching from a distance, unable to move. And when the woman reached across the table and touched Emily's hand, Vivian felt something dark and hot claw up her throat. Jealousy. Real.
Raw. Ugly.
She hated it. Hated how much she wanted to storm across the street and pull Emily away. Hated how her fingers twitched with the need to claim her. But she didn't move. She just stood there, paralyzed by the weight of her own inaction. The next morning, Emily walked into the office the same as always, composed, professional, unreadable. But Vivian couldn't look at her the same way. She couldn't stop seeing that rooftop. That other woman's hand on Emily's. And suddenly, it hit her like a truck to the chest. She was losing her. That night, she didn't go home. She stayed in her office long after the building had emptied, pacing like a woman possessed. She tried to work.
Failed.
Tried to write an email. Deleted it. Tried to convince herself that the jealousy wasn't about Emily. But it was. It had always been about Emily. The late nights, the unreasonable demands, the excuses to keep her close. It wasn't just power. It was obsession. It was longing. It was need. And now someone else was touching what she'd never had the courage to reach for. At midnight, she cracked. She typed a message with trembling fingers. Emily. My office.
Now.
She didn't know if Emily would still be awake. She didn't know if she would come. But 5 minutes later, the elevator dinged. And there she was. In flats, no makeup, hoodie and jeans, but still the most beautiful thing Vivian had ever seen. You called? Emily asked softly, stepping inside. Vivian stared at her. Where were you last night? Emily blinked. Excuse me? I saw you. On the rooftop. Emily's expression shifted. A slow, measured blink. You followed me?
No.
I saw you by accident. I was nearby. And Vivian took a step forward. Were you on a date? Emily tilted her head. Why do you care? Just answer the question. Yes, Emily said, voice flat. I was on a date. Silence. Vivian's breath hitched. Did you kiss her? Do you really want to know? Yes. Then yes. I kissed her. It wasn't the words that hurt. It was the way Emily said them.
Calm.
Steady. Like Vivian had no right to be wounded. And she didn't. Not really. But God, it still burned. You kissed her, Vivian repeated, like she could erase it by saying it out loud. Emily's eyes narrowed. Are you seriously doing this right now? After everything? I needed to know. Why? Emily snapped. So, you can punish me? Humiliate me? Call me into your office in the middle of the night just to remind me I belong to you? Vivian's voice cracked. You do. Emily stared at her.
No.
I don't. Not unless you say it. Not unless you mean it. Vivian stepped forward, voice trembling. I do. I mean it. She stopped herself, chest heaving, eyes wild. Emily's voice softened, just a little. Say it, Vivian. A long silence. Then, brokenly. I want you. I've always wanted you. Emily swallowed hard. Then why do you keep pushing me away? Vivian shook her head. Because if I let you in, I don't know if I'll ever be able to let you go. That was the most honest thing she'd ever said. Emily closed the distance slowly. Maybe I don't want to go. Vivian looked at her, something fragile flickering in her eyes. Then, softly, you kissed her. Emily nodded. And I thought of you the whole time. Vivian exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. And then, finally, she reached out and touched Emily's face.
Light. Tentative.
Reverent. Tell me to stop, Vivian whispered. No, Emily breathed. Not this time. And then they kissed. Not like before. This wasn't desperate. This was slow. Deep. Full of all the things they'd held back. Vivian's hands tangled in Emily's hair. Emily wrapped her arms around Vivian's waist. For the first time, there was no war, no tension, no power games. Just them. Vivian Langford wasn't used to waking up next to someone. She wasn't used to anyone seeing her before the armor was back on, before the lipstick, the heels, the perfect composure. But that morning, as sunlight bled into her penthouse and painted the silk sheets in gold, she didn't want to move. Not because she was tired, but because Emily was still asleep beside her. And for once, Vivian didn't feel like running. Emily's face was soft in sleep, her hair loose across the pillow, one hand curled near her chin like a quiet defense she didn't need. She looked peaceful, open. Nothing like the sharp-witted, carefully controlled woman Vivian had spent 3 years pretending not to fall for. It should have terrified her. It should have made her panic, bolt, say something cruel to create distance. But it didn't. All Vivian could feel was warmth and an ache. One that started low in her chest and pulsed outward every time Emily shifted slightly in her sleep and unconsciously leaned closer. She stayed, Vivian thought. She stayed. But staying came with consequences. And Vivian Langford had never been good at consequences. When Emily finally stirred, the quiet was broken, not abruptly, but delicately. A sigh, a stretch, a sleepy blink. Good morning, Emily said, voice low and husky. Vivian stared at her like the words were unfamiliar. I don't usually do this, she said before she could stop herself. Emily smiled. Stay in bed past 6 a.m.? Let someone close. Emily's smile faltered. She rolled onto her back, staring at the ceiling. Is that your way of warning me this didn't mean anything? No, Vivian said quickly. Too quickly. Emily turned her head. Then what are we doing? Vivian opened her mouth.
Closed it.
I don't know. That's not good enough. Emily, no, she said, sitting up. The sheet slipped slightly down her shoulder, and Vivian's eyes flickered there for a moment before returning to her face. If we keep doing this without defining it, I'm going to fall. And I need to know there's something to catch me. Vivian's heart stuttered. I'm not used to needing people. Then start. It's not that simple. It could be. We work together. Not when we're here. Vivian shook her head. There's more at stake than just gossip or policy violations. If this falls apart, I lose everything. And what if you don't do anything and lose me instead? The question hit harder than Emily knew. Vivian looked away, voice tight. Give me time. Emily nodded slowly, but not forever. For the rest of the morning, the distance was there, subtle but undeniable. They dressed in silence. Emily declined breakfast. Vivian didn't stop her. When they arrived at the office, it was as if nothing had happened. But everything had. The next week blurred into routine, but underneath it all, the current was changing. Vivian started watching Emily in meetings, not with her usual scrutiny, but with softness she didn't show anyone else. She began asking how she was, not just what she'd accomplished. Little things. Unspoken things. And Emily, she stopped flirting with other people. She stopped going out at night. But she also stopped waiting for Vivian to act. She let her have her silence, her control, her hesitation. But she didn't chase anymore. And Vivian felt it. One afternoon, Vivian caught Emily laughing in the break room with a junior associate. Too loud, too free. Something twisted in her chest. She didn't confront it. She couldn't. Instead, she went back to her office and stared at the door, hoping Emily would knock. She didn't. That night, Vivian typed out a message a dozen times and deleted it.
Come over.
I miss you.
I want to see you. I'm sorry.
None of them felt right. None of them felt like enough. She didn't send anything. Emily noticed. The next morning, Vivian arrived at work to find her favorite coffee on her desk. No note. Just the coffee, warm and perfect and familiar. She didn't drink it. She stared at it like it might give her courage. At noon, she called Emily into her office. Thank you for the coffee, she said. You're welcome. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Why? Emily met her eyes. Because even when you pretend you don't need anything, I know better. Vivian's chest tightened. Why do you do that? What? See through me? Emily's voice was quiet. Because I want to. Vivian looked at her for a long time. I'm trying. Emily softened. I know. I'm just not sure I know how to do this right. Then don't try to do it right. Just do it real. For a moment, the distance between them dissolved. But then the intercom buzzed, and reality snapped back. Vivian's assistant. Your father just arrived, Ms. Langford. He's heading up now. Vivian froze. Emily stepped back. Should I leave? No, Vivian said, voice suddenly clipped. Stay. Are you sure?
Yes.
Just stay quiet. Seconds later, the door opened, and in walked Richard Langford.
Tall.
Cold. Charismatic in a way that felt manufactured. He wore a tailored suit and a forced smile. Vivian. Father. His eyes flicked to Emily. And who's this? My executive assistant. Pretty. Sharp, I hope. Very. Emily didn't flinch, but something in her body shifted. Vivian noticed. We'll be done in 5 minutes, Vivian said to Emily, without looking at her. Close the door on your way out. And just like that, the glass between them went back up. Emily nodded once and left. Her heart was pounding. Something about that man unsettled her. And something about the way Vivian changed in his presence, how cold she became, made her chest ache. On the other side of the door, Vivian sat back in her chair, fingers clenched. Why are you here? She asked him. Richard smiled. To remind you of your responsibilities. I don't need reminding. No, he said smoothly. Because I've heard you've been distracted lately. Your board is whispering. Vivian didn't move. My board can whisper all they like. I'm still in charge. For now. And then he leaned in. Whatever you're doing with that girl, end it. Vivian went still. Excuse me? You heard me. You want to play?
Fine.
But don't embarrass the family. You know how this ends. Vivian's blood went cold. Get out. You're still that little girl who wanted to be loved by me, he said. You'll make the right decision. She stood. I said get out.
He did.
But he left the chill behind. That night, Vivian didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't send for Emily. She lay in her penthouse, drowning in silence. But this time, she wasn't alone. This time, fear was in bed with her. And it was whispering that if she wasn't careful, she'd lose everything, especially the one woman who made her feel human. 3 days passed. Not a word. Not a glance. Not a message. Emily waited. At first. The first night, she stared at her phone like it might ring if she stared hard enough. She thought of the way Vivian had touched her face. The way she had said, I want you, like it was the only thing keeping her breathing. But then nothing. No follow-up. No explanation. Just cold silence. Like it had never happened. Like she had never happened. By the second day, Emily started deleting drafts of messages she'd never sent. Was it your father? Did he scare you? Are you really going to let someone else decide this for you? She didn't send any of them.
She wouldn't beg.
Not again. By the third day, something inside her snapped. Vivian had said she was trying. But trying wasn't enough if she always disappeared the moment it mattered most. Emily deserved more than half promises and stolen moments in private lounges. She wanted to be chosen. In the office, things were sterile. Vivian avoided her like it was strategy, leaving notes through intermediaries, delegating everything, even skipping meetings she would normally control with an iron grip. Emily played along. She smiled. She worked. She said nothing. But her heart was retreating with every hour. And Vivian? She was suffocating. She had thought distance would make things clearer, that space would help her think. But instead, it felt like trying to breathe underwater. The silence between them was screaming. Every time she passed Emily's desk and saw her typing with that perfectly calm face, Vivian felt her stomach twist. And when she caught her laughing with that same junior associate again, soft, flirty, just enough to make a point, Vivian nearly snapped. But she didn't say a word, because her father's voice was still echoing in her head. Whatever you're doing with that girl, end it. Because she knew the board was watching. Because she had spent her whole life building an empire out of control, image, and fear. And love didn't fit into that structure. Not with someone like Emily. Not when that love made her feel human.
Weak.
Vulnerable. That afternoon, Emily typed her resignation letter. She didn't plan to send it yet. But she needed to know it was there. That she had an out. That she could walk away and protect what is left of her dignity before it was too late. Because Vivian had made her feel wanted, needed, seen, but never safe. And Emily couldn't stay in a place where love had to hide. That night, she stayed late. Again. She wasn't sure why. Habit, maybe. Or the desperate hope that Vivian would come to her office door one last time and say something, anything. But no one came. She shut off the lights herself. Walked out into the cold. Took the long way home. Vivian sat in her penthouse staring out over the city like it was some battlefield she'd conquered. But tonight, she didn't feel like a queen. She felt like a coward. She remembered the way Emily had looked at her that last night. Not with seduction. With hope. And she'd let that hope die. She hadn't even fought. She picked up her phone at midnight.
Typed.
Deleted. Typed again.
I'm sorry.
Please come over. I need you. But none of it felt like enough. She was too late. And she knew it. The next morning, Emily walked into the office early. She placed a sealed envelope on Vivian's desk. The letter inside was simple. Professional. Not emotional. No accusations. Just closure. Effective 2 weeks from today, I resign my position as your executive assistant. I appreciate the opportunities I've had here. I wish you and the company the best. She didn't wait to see Vivian's reaction.
She didn't want to.
But she knew when she heard that office door open just after 8 a.m. that Vivian had read it. The silence that followed was thunderous. Vivian didn't call her in. Didn't stop her. The message was clear. Letting her go was easier than fighting. And Emily? She'd never felt so small. By lunchtime, the whole executive floor knew. Whispers flickered like sparks. Why was she leaving? Did she get a better offer? Did something happen? But Emily kept her mouth shut. She was done protecting Vivian. Done making it easier for her to disappear. That night, Vivian sat in her office long after everyone left, holding the letter like it was burning her fingers. She hadn't cried in 10 years. Not since the day she signed her first acquisition and chose power over everything else. But now, her throat felt tight. Her chest ached. Because she had finally pushed Emily too far. And there was no one else to blame. The next day, she asked her assistant to hold all calls. She sat in her office and didn't work, didn't plan, didn't perform. She just sat, remembering. The kiss in the lounge. The whispered confessions. Emily's laughter. Her strength. Her ability to see right through Vivian's walls without asking for permission. And now she was leaving. Because Vivian hadn't been brave enough to say stay. 11 days. That's how long Vivian Langford had before Emily Walker walked out of her life for good. 11 days until the woman who had kissed her without permission, who had called her out on every mask she wore, who had touched her and meant it, who had waited far too long for something real, was gone. The resignation letter sat on her desk like a death sentence.
Neat.
Final. No emotion, no plea. Just facts. Vivian had read it twice every day since it arrived. Like torture. Like she thought the words might change if she stared long enough. They didn't. Emily didn't bring it up. She came in every morning like always, dressed impeccably, hair pulled back, voice steady. She answered emails, coordinated meetings, took notes. Efficient.
Brilliant. Distant.
But her eyes never lingered. Her tone never softened. It was like she'd built a wall around herself overnight, and Vivian was on the outside now, locked out. And it was her own damn fault. On the fourth day, Vivian cracked. "Emily," she said suddenly, just before a meeting. Emily looked up, one brow slightly raised. "Yes." Vivian hesitated. "Could we talk after this?" A pause. Then, coolly, "About work?" Vivian's throat tightened. "No," another pause. Then no, not today. She turned and walked away before Vivian could say anything else. And that was the thing, Emily wasn't angry. She wasn't lashing out. She wasn't trying to punish. She was done. And that was worse. Because anger Vivian could handle. She could meet fury with fury. But this quiet, composed retreat, it was like watching someone gently close a door she'd never be allowed to open again. That night, Vivian didn't go home. She stayed in her office again, but this time there was no pacing. No whine. Just silence. She sat in the dark and wondered how she'd let it come to this. How someone as powerful as her, someone who could shut down a negotiation with a glance, who could bend entire industries with her signature, had been too afraid to say 2 words. Stay.
Please.
She thought of all the times she'd chosen silence over truth, distance over honesty, pride over vulnerability. And now, the cost of those choices had a name and a departure date. Across the city, Emily lay in her bed with her phone pressed to her chest. No messages. No calls. Not even a late night, "Are you okay?" She wasn't surprised. She didn't cry. But she didn't sleep either. Her chest ached. Not with regret, but with a strange, hollow kind of grief. She had loved her.
Still did.
God help her. She still wanted Vivian. But love without action meant nothing. And if Vivian couldn't meet her halfway after everything, then leaving wasn't a loss. It was survival. On the 6th day, something changed. Vivian came into the office, looking different. Not in appearance. She was still immaculate. But something in her posture was softer.
Worn.
Almost human. She stopped by Emily's desk, hesitant. "Do you have a minute?" Emily didn't look up. "I'm heading into a meeting." "I know," Vivian said. I wanted to say thank you." That made Emily look up. For what? For everything. For staying this long. Emily's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "That's the first honest thing you've said to me in weeks." Vivian nodded once, then turned and left. It wasn't much, but it was the first crack in the silence, and it shook something loose. The next day, Vivian called her into the office, but not for work. She had 2 coffees on the table, real ones. From the cafe Emily liked, not the corporate sludge from the break room. "Sit with me," she said. Emily hesitated. Then Saturday, "This doesn't change anything," she said. "I know. I'm still leaving." "I know. Then why do this?" Vivian's voice was quiet. "Because I'm not ready to let you go without at least trying." Emily stared at her. "You had months to try." "I know," Vivian said again. "I was scared." "Of what?" "Of everything you make me feel. Of how much I care. Of how much it would destroy me to need you and lose you anyway." Emily's heart thudded. "So, your solution was to push me away before I could leave you?" "Yes." A beat. "And I was wrong." Silence stretched between them like a wire pulled tight. Then Emily said, "You still don't know what you want." "I want you. You want control." "Not anymore." "Then prove it." Vivian met her eyes.
How?
"Tell someone. Stop hiding. Let someone see you want me." "You know I can't, then I can't stay." The moment shattered. Vivian exhaled like she'd been stabbed. But she didn't argue. She didn't beg. She just nodded. "Okay." That night, Emily packed a box. She took the plants from her windowsill, her coffee mug, the pen Vivian had given her last Christmas, and the framed photo of her and the team from last year's gala. She stood in the office long after hours, staring at her empty desk. It didn't feel like freedom. It felt like grief. Vivian watched from behind the glass wall. She didn't go to her,
Didn't speak.
but her fists were clenched so tightly her nails bit into her palms. 2 more days. That's all she had. 48 hours before Emily was gone. And maybe this was how it was supposed to end. Quiet. Undone. Unspoken. But deep down, in the part of her that was still a girl desperate to be loved, Vivian felt something spark. Maybe not hope, but something close. 41 hours. That's how long Vivian Langford had before Emily Walker's resignation became official. 41 hours before the desk outside her office would sit permanently empty, before that steady, grounding presence would vanish, and before the woman she couldn't stop loving walked away because she didn't know how to ask her to stay. Vivian had always believed silence was strength, that emotions were liabilities, vulnerability a cost she couldn't afford. But now, all that strength, all that silence, it had become her prison. And she'd built it herself. The morning felt wrong from the start. The office buzzed too loud. The lights felt too sharp. Every voice sounded like static. Vivian hadn't slept. She hadn't eaten. Her body was running on caffeine and stress and one steadily unraveling nerve. Every time she looked at Emily, her chest ached. But she kept pretending, kept wearing the face. Because after a lifetime of control, of keeping everything behind polished glass, how do you shatter it all just for one person? Even if that person was the only one who had ever mattered. Emily, for her part, was a ghost in motion. She moved quietly, deliberately, wrapping up tasks, leaving notes for the incoming assistant, answering final emails with detached precision. She didn't linger, didn't look at Vivian longer than she had to. But she felt her. Every breath, every glance, every unspoken apology hanging in the air. It was torture, because part of her still hoped. A small, stubborn, dying ember that maybe, just maybe, Vivian would stop pretending she didn't care. But Emily had made peace with the silence. She wasn't expecting anything anymore. She'd given everything. And now, she was taking herself back. That afternoon, the board had its quarterly closed-door meeting. Vivian sat at the head of the table, surrounded by men in suits who had never once known what it meant to feel powerless. They discussed revenue projections, international expansion, and market dominance. But Vivian wasn't listening. She was watching the clock. Every tick felt like a countdown. She thought of Emily's laugh, the way she chewed her pen when deep in thought, the way she never flinched when Vivian raised her voice, never bowed when the pressure mounted. The way she kissed like it meant something. Because it had. "Ms. Langford," a voice snapped her back. One of the board members. Older.
Smug.
"You've been unusually quiet. Are you with us?" "I'm present," she said. But she wasn't. Because across the building, Emily was putting the last of her belongings in a cardboard box. And Vivian couldn't breathe. When the meeting ended, Vivian walked straight to the executive floor. But Emily was gone. Her desk bare. No coffee mug. No notebooks. No faint scent of lavender and steel. Just emptiness. She stared at it for a long time. Her assistant approached. She left for the day. "Where?" Vivian asked too fast. "Did she say anything?" "Just that she'd see you tomorrow for the exit interview." The words were sharp enough to cut skin. Vivian turned and locked herself in her office. She sat at her desk and stared at the box Emily had delivered earlier. Inside were old files, project notes, personal touches she'd left behind. But taped to the top was a simple envelope. No name, No decoration. Just one handwritten word.
Vivian.
With trembling hands, she opened it. The letter was short. I didn't leave because I stopped caring. I left because you never showed me you did. I needed you to fight for me.
To say something.
To make me feel like I was more than a risk you couldn't take. You asked for time, but time doesn't wait.
And neither will I.
I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope it's love.
Goodbye.
Vivian read it twice, then a third time. By the fourth, the words started to blur. Not from fatigue. From something deeper. Something warmer. Her throat burned. Her chest heaved. And for the first time in 10 years, Vivian Langford cried. Not politely. Not quietly. She buried her face in her hands and shattered. Because now it was real. Not just the resignation. Not just the letter. But the truth. She'd let her go. And not because she didn't love her. Because she was too afraid to love her out loud. Across town, Emily sat in a corner booth of a small bar with a glass of wine she wasn't drinking and a smile she wasn't feeling. Her friends chatted around her, voices distant, laughter hollow. She kept checking her phone. No messages. Not even a missed call. Okay, she told herself. That's it. It was over. She had survived worse. She would survive this. But when she stepped outside into the night air, she felt it, the absence. Like something had been torn out of her without permission. And still no message. No Vivian. The next morning was her last day. Final meetings. Exit interview. Clean paperwork. Just one more hour in the building where she'd spent 3 years giving her everything to someone who didn't know how to take it. She stepped off the elevator expecting awkward smiles, maybe a few whispers. But what she didn't expect was Vivian. Standing in front of her desk. Waiting. Emily froze. Vivian looked up. And this time, she didn't look away. You didn't answer my message, Vivian said. Emily blinked. What message? Vivian stepped closer. The one I didn't send. The one where I told you I'm in love with you. Emily didn't speak.
Couldn't.
I didn't send it, Vivian continued, voice rough, because I thought it would be selfish. Because I thought it was too late. Because I thought you deserved better than someone who took too long. And now, Emily whispered. Vivian's eyes burned. Now I don't care how late it is. I need you to hear it. She stepped closer. I love you. I've been in love with you for longer than I'll ever admit. And I've been a coward. I've been cruel. I've been silent. But I'm not going to let you walk away without telling you the truth. Emily's heart thudded. So, what do you want? Vivian looked at her like she was oxygen. I want you to stay. And if I can't promise it'll be easy, then I'll promise I won't run. A long silence stretched between them. Emily's eyes shimmered. But she said nothing. Just nodded once. Exit interviews in 15, she said softly. Then walked past her. Vivian didn't follow. Not yet. Because sometimes when you've broken something real, you don't get to fix it in a single moment.
You fix it by staying.
Again. And again. And again. The moment Vivian said, I love you, something shifted. Not just in the air between them, but in Emily. It wasn't relief. It wasn't closure. It was something far more complicated. The terrifying realization that what she'd wanted for so long, what she had begged for in silence and in boldness alike, had finally been offered, but only now, at the edge of goodbye. Vivian had said it too late. And maybe, just maybe, too easily. Love isn't a lifeline you throw when someone's already halfway out the door. It's something you fight for. Day after day. Word after word. Presence after presence. And right now, Emily wasn't ready to forget how long she'd been standing there alone. Vivian watched her walk away with a knot in her throat. She didn't chase. She didn't beg. She let her go, again. But not out of fear this time. Out of respect. Because she finally understood what she'd broken. And that kind of damage wasn't fixed in a hallway confession. Emily attended her exit interview with quiet professionalism. She signed her documents, thanked HR, handed in her badge. By lunchtime, she was officially no longer an employee of Langford Enterprises. Just gone. A presence erased from systems and spreadsheets, but not from hearts. Especially not Vivian's. The office felt colder instantly. Her assistant spoke quieter. No one lingered in the halls. Even the boardroom felt different without that single pair of eyes that always saw her, not just her title. For the first time in a decade, Vivian didn't feel powerful. She felt empty. But she didn't spiral. She didn't run. She remembered what Emily had said in that final hallway exchange. Words are only the beginning. So she got up. And she started to try. The first attempt was a letter. Handwritten. Not typed. Not dictated. Her own pen. Her own ink. Her own faltering sentences. You were never just my assistant. You were my compass. My conscience. My calm. I don't want to ask you to forgive me yet. I want to earn that. I want to become the kind of person you could trust again. The kind who doesn't disappear when things get real. I don't know if I deserve another chance. But I do know this. I want to spend every day trying to be worth one. She didn't send it. Not right away. Instead, she sat with it. Rewrote it. Let it soak. Let herself soak in what it meant to try. And 2 days later, she knocked on Emily's door. No warning. No assistant. No chauffeur. Just Vivian. In jeans and a coat. And no armor left. Emily answered in leggings and a t-shirt, barefoot, clearly not expecting anyone. Their eyes met. Neither moved. Vivian? Emily asked, wary. I wrote something, Vivian said. I want you to read it. I won't stay. I won't talk. Just read it. She handed over the envelope. Emily took it with careful fingers. Vivian turned, walked away, and didn't look back. Inside, Emily sat on the couch and stared at the letter for 5 full minutes before opening it. And when she read it, her hands shook. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't flowery. It wasn't a grand apology. It was honest, messy, human. For the first time, she saw Vivian trying not to win, not to control, but just to be real. She didn't respond. Not that night. Not the next. Vivian didn't expect her to. But she didn't stop. The next week, she sent coffee to Emily's door. The exact blend she liked. No note. Just a small gesture. Then flowers once. Not roses. Lavender. Her favorite. Then one afternoon, she showed up outside the building where Emily was doing freelance work. Not with a pitch. Not to beg. Just to be there. I'm not asking for anything, she said when Emily stepped outside to confront her. I'm just showing up. You said once that I disappear when it matters. I don't want to do that anymore. Emily crossed her arms. Why now? Because I'm not your boss anymore. I don't get to command your attention. I have to earn it. Emily didn't answer. But she didn't walk away either. Days passed. Messages came. Not daily, not clingy. Just consistent. Thoughtful. Gentle. I saw this book and thought of you. You would have ripped apart the logic in this article. Reminds me of your brain. I miss hearing your voice, even when you're lecturing me. Slowly, Emily let herself read them. Then one night she responded. Just once. You remembered the lavender. Vivian stared at the text like it was sunlight after a long storm. She didn't press. Just replied, I remember everything. Emily didn't respond again. But the door had opened. Slightly. Barely. Enough. Vivian didn't rush in. She respected the space. She respected her. But every day she kept showing up in small ways. And Emily? She started to see her. Not the boss. Not the millionaire. The woman. The one trying. The one scared. The one who'd never been taught how to stay, but was finally learning. Then, 10 days after the resignation, Vivian got a knock at her door. She opened it to find Emily standing there. Not angry. Not cold.
Calm.
I got your letters, she said. All of them. Vivian nodded. Even the one I never sent. Good. Emily stepped inside. Because I have something to say, too. Vivian held her breath. Emily looked her dead in the eyes. You don't get to say you love me once and think that's enough. Vivian's chest tightened. I know. Love isn't a statement. It's a choice. Daily. Relentless. Especially when it's hard. I'm trying to make that choice now. Vivian said, voice barely above a whisper. Then show me.
A pause.
Not with gifts. Not with notes. With you. Vivian nodded. Okay. I'm not promising anything, Emily said. Not yet. I'm not asking for promise, Vivian said. I'm asking for a chance to earn one. Silence stretched between them. Not awkward. Not painful. Just full. And then, for the first time since that velvet lounge, Emily stepped forward and touched Vivian's hand. The first time Emily touched Vivian's hand again, it felt like forgiveness hadn't arrived, but was finally on its way. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a surrender. It was an opening. A single, cautious step into something that might become real if they didn't rush it. Vivian stood frozen as their fingers touched. Not tightly. Not possessively.
Gently.
She didn't speak. Didn't move. She just looked down at Emily's hand resting lightly over hers, as if it were the most fragile thing in the world. Because it was. This isn't me coming back, Emily had said softly. This is me giving you the space to show me that I should. Vivian nodded. Then I'll show you. Over the next weeks, she did. Not with grand gestures. Vivian Langford could buy cities. But Emily Walker wasn't a woman who could be bought. She had learned that lesson the hard way. So she chose another strategy. One that scared her more than anything else. Consistency. She called when she said she would. She showed up when she was needed. She didn't cancel. She didn't ghost. She didn't run. She was, for the first time in her adult life, present. And not just professionally. Emotionally. Intimately. She let Emily see her without the perfect clothes, the flawless posture, the guarded smile. They started seeing each other again, not like lovers, not like strangers, but like something in between. Like a slow-burning question neither of them could stop asking. Can we really do this differently? Their first dinner was awkward. Vivian didn't know what to wear, so she wore something simple. A soft gray sweater, jeans. Her hair loose. She felt exposed. Emily showed up in black boots and a leather jacket, no makeup, hair in a braid. You look nervous, Emily said, sliding into the booth. I am, Vivian admitted. That's new, Emily replied. It's honest, Vivian said. And that was the beginning. The walls didn't fall in a dramatic crash. They didn't throw themselves into each other's arms. There were no rushed declarations. What there was instead was space.
Grace. Time.
They sat and talked.
About books.
About the day. About a woman on the subway Emily had seen crying into a bag of pretzels. They laughed.
Quietly. Carefully.
It was all so tentative. But something about that made it more real than any kiss ever had. And at the end of the night, when Vivian walked her to her door, she didn't ask to come in.
She said goodnight.
And she left. Emily stood on the other side of the door, hand against it, wondering how it was possible to feel so raw and still safe. The second dinner was easier. The third, lighter. By the fourth, Vivian reached across the table, slowly, and Emily didn't pull away. This scares me, Vivian whispered. Emily turned her palm up, accepting her fingers.
Good, she said.
It means you're doing it right. There were setbacks. Moments when Vivian flinched at closeness. When Emily recoiled from being touched too long. Nights where silence felt heavy. But they didn't give up. Vivian especially stayed. The woman who had once vanished the moment things became too real now sat through the discomfort. She asked hard questions. She listened without defense. She apologized, genuinely, repeatedly. She told Emily how much she admired her mind, her resilience, her ability to stand alone. She asked about her fears, her childhood, what she wanted from love, not just from them, but in general. And Emily, she watched it all.
Carefully, cautiously,
but with a heart that was slowly, painfully, opening again. Until one night, after a long walk along the water, after sharing a gelato, after talking about things neither of them had spoken aloud in years, Emily looked at Vivian and asked, "Do you still think you're hard to love?" Vivian paused. "Not when I'm with you." Emily didn't say anything right away. She just nodded, turned toward her apartment door, then turned back. Do you want to come up? Vivian's breath caught. Yes. That night wasn't like the others. It wasn't about lust. It wasn't about urgency. It was slow, careful, reverent. They undressed each other not like women chasing a rush, but like people finally ready to be seen. Vivian traced the lines of Emily's collarbone with her mouth, like it was holy. Emily ran her fingers through Vivian's hair with a tenderness that made them both ache. And when they finally fell asleep tangled in the same sheets again, it wasn't a risk. It wasn't a mistake. It was the most honest thing either of them had ever done. In the morning, Emily made coffee. Vivian folded the blanket. Neither of them spoke about what it meant. They didn't have to, because this time no one ran. Still, Emily hadn't said she forgave her. Not yet. She hadn't moved her things back into Vivian's life, hadn't called this anything official. But the difference was clear. She wanted to. And Vivian? She had stopped trying to control the outcome. She was just grateful for every moment that Emily stayed. Grateful she hadn't let fear win again. One afternoon, 2 weeks later, as they sat in Vivian's living room, books open, wine half finished, Emily looked over and said, "You haven't asked me once if I'm coming back." "I don't want to ask," Vivian said. "Why?" "Because I want you to come back on your own. Not because I begged. Not because I pushed. Because it's what you want." Emily closed her book. "And if I told you I'm thinking about it?" Vivian turned toward her. "I'd say thank you. And then I'd ask what you need from me to make it feel safe again." Emily stared at her for a long time. "Stay. Show up. Every time. Don't disappear when it's hard." "I can do that," Vivian whispered. "No," Emily said gently. "You have to do that." Vivian nodded. "I will." And for the first time in months, Emily smiled with her whole heart. They had found something like peace. Not perfection. Not fairy tale ease. But real, imperfect, earned peace. The kind that only comes after a storm that's nearly destroyed everything. Vivian no longer tried to impress Emily. She no longer wore masks around her, no longer used silence as a shield. She had learned how to say, "I was wrong." How to sit in discomfort without retreating. How to hold Emily when she didn't know what to say, and how to let Emily hold her when the world felt too heavy. And Emily? She no longer braced for abandonment. She no longer flinched at soft words, or doubted the consistency she once thought impossible from Vivian. She had her own space, her own rhythm, her own identity, and Vivian didn't threaten it anymore. She supported it. They weren't perfect. They had days where they misunderstood each other, moments where they snapped, got quiet, turned away. But the difference now? They came back. Every time. Vivian showed up. Emily let her in. And love, the kind that once came with warning signs and tight chests and cold mornings, had begun to feel like a place they could breathe. It was fragile, but it was real. That night, Vivian took Emily to a gallery opening. Not a corporate event. Not a client affair. Just something personal. A quiet space with art and wine and candlelight. She stood beside her not like a secret, but like someone who belonged. She introduced Emily as someone very important to me. She didn't flinch when others looked twice. Didn't lower her voice. Didn't let go of Emily's hand. Emily didn't say it out loud, but she felt it deep in her chest. This was what being chosen felt like. Not hidden. Not conditional. Not almost. They left the gallery with quiet smiles and an unspoken sense of rightness. Vivian walked Emily to her apartment and lingered outside the door. "I didn't think I'd ever have this," Vivian said. "Not with anyone, but especially not with someone who knew the worst of me." "You weren't the worst," Emily replied gently. "You were scared, and hurting, and too proud to ask for what you needed." "And now?" Vivian asked. "Now," Emily said, brushing a hand against her cheek. "You ask. And I'm still here." Vivian didn't kiss her. Not right away. She just leaned in and rested her forehead against Emily's, breathing her in. "Thank you for not letting me ruin us completely." "You came back," Emily whispered. "That saved us more than anything else." The kiss that followed wasn't desperate. It was full.
Warm. Real.
But love is rarely linear. And just when it starts to feel safe, the past has a way of testing how much you've really changed. It started with an email from the board, a reminder about the annual shareholders conference. Vivian had known it was coming, but this year, she had plans to finally go as herself. No dates to impress investors. No manufactured image. She wanted to bring Emily, not as an assistant, not as a roomer, but as her partner. Emily hesitated when Vivian asked, "You want to take me there?" "I don't want to take you," Vivian said. "I want to be there with you." "You know what they'll say." "Let them." Emily's heart squeezed. "Vivian, this is bigger than gossip. These people, you've spent your entire career trying to prove yourself in front of them. I don't want to be the thing they use to question your worth. You're not a liability, Emily. You're my choice." That should have been enough. For a moment it was, until the call came. Richard Langford, her father. Again. Vivian didn't answer the first 2 times. But the 3rd time she picked up. "If this is about the conference," she said immediately, "I'm not interested in your opinion." "You should be," he replied coolly, "because your board is. They've been asking questions." "Let them." "About her." Vivian went still. "Emily is not up for discussion. She's the reason your image is cracking." "No," Vivian said, voice shaking. "You are. Because I let you convince me that love was weakness. That needing someone made me less. You were wrong. You'll regret this." "Maybe. But I won't regret her." She hung up, hands shaking, breath shallow. Emily wasn't in the room, but somehow she had never felt closer. The night before the conference, Vivian stood in front of the mirror adjusting her cufflinks. Her nerves were quiet, focused. She was going to walk into that room with Emily. She was going to look every man in the eye and let them know she was no longer asking for permission to be herself. She didn't need their approval. She needed her. Emily stepped out of the bedroom in a black dress that made Vivian forget how to speak. "Still sure about this?" Emily asked, half teasing, half fearful. Vivian walked over, took her hand, kissed it. "No," Emily blinked. "No." Vivian smiled. "I'm not sure. I'm terrified. But I'm still doing it. Because that's what this means now. We don't wait until we're certain. We show up even when it's messy." Emily's eyes shimmered. "Okay then." She kissed her gently. "Let's be messy together." The conference was tense. Eyes followed them. Conversations paused. Some smiles were tight. Some were real. But Vivian never let go of Emily's hand. Not once. At the reception dinner, an older board member made a pointed comment. "You used to be more discreet, Vivian." She smiled. "I used to be less brave." Later, Emily stepped away to use the restroom. Vivian waited by the bar, swirling her drink. Her phone buzzed. Another message from her father. Still time to correct this mistake. She deleted it, without reading the rest. But when she turned around, Emily was gone. Not from the building. Just from view. Not answering her phone. Not in the ballroom. Not outside. Panic prickled under Vivian's skin. Until she found her, alone, on the rooftop balcony, hands braced on the railing, head down. "Emily." Vivian rushed over. Emily turned slowly. "I just needed air." "You scared me." Emily's voice cracked. "You've never looked at me the way you did in there." "How did I look?" "Like you were trying not to flinch. Like you were bracing for impact." Vivian stepped closer. "I was. But not from you. From them. From what I've let them represent all my life. I don't want to be the reason you lose everything you built." Vivian cupped her face. "You're not the reason I lose anything. You're the reason I finally know what matters." Emily blinked fast. "Don't say that unless you mean it." "I do." "Then stop looking like you're scared to choose me." Vivian let the silence sit. Then, "Okay." Emily frowned. "Okay. I'm not scared anymore." "Prove it." Vivian looked around the empty balcony. Then, in heels and diamonds and a silk blazer worth more than most people's rent, she pulled Emily into her arms and kissed her. Slow.
Bold.
Unapologetic. Anyone could have walked out. Anyone could have seen. And Vivian didn't care. Emily melted into her, finally, and whispered, "Okay, maybe I believe you now." Vivian smiled against her mouth. "Then let me keep showing you." They didn't talk about the kiss right away. The one on the rooftop. The one where Vivian Langford had kissed Emily Walker in front of the world. Or, at least, the people who used to be her world. But they didn't have to talk about it. Because everything changed after that. There was no more pretending. No more hesitating. No more stepping back at the first sign of risk. That kiss had been a declaration. Vivian's silence, once a shield, had turned into clarity. Her father's voice didn't matter anymore. The board's whispers didn't matter. Her fear didn't matter. Emily mattered. And for the first time, she was acting like it. They went home together that night. No guilt. No unfinished sentences. Just two women finally existing in the space they'd both been afraid to occupy fully. In the morning, Vivian cooked breakfast. Burnt the toast. Emily laughed, sat on the counter, and said, "You know you can order a 5-star brunch from your phone, right?" "That's not the point," Vivian said, throwing the pan in the sink and grabbing the jam anyway. "Then what is?" Emily asked, grinning. "I want you to wake up in a space I made for you, not one I just paid for." Emily didn't answer. She just pulled her in and kissed her like maybe she was already home. For days, the world fell quiet around them. They shared morning routines, grocery lists, long conversations in bed. They talked about things they'd never voiced out loud. Vivian's childhood, Emily's dreams, the quiet ache of loneliness they had both become too skilled at hiding. For the first time, love wasn't just tension and longing. It was presence, warmth,
Light.
Emily began leaving a toothbrush at Vivian's place. Vivian cleared space in her closet without being asked. They didn't label it. They didn't need to. But life doesn't pause just because two people fall in love. And some consequences don't vanish when you're finally ready to face them. On a Thursday morning, Vivian was called into a board emergency meeting. The faces around the table were colder than usual. Formal. Expressionless. She knew something was wrong before the door closed. It wasn't about profits. It wasn't about the conference. It was about her. "This is not personal," one of them said, which always meant it was. "You've made unapproved decisions, taken personal risks, and allowed your private life to affect the company's image." "What personal risks?" she asked, tone like steel. "Your relationship with Emily Walker. She no longer works here. She used to. And that doesn't go unnoticed. We've received concerns from shareholders." Vivian clenched her jaw. "So let me get this straight. You're saying my ability to lead is in question because I fell in love. Because you compromised structure for emotion." "No," Vivian said quietly. "I chose love over fear. And if that's a problem for you, then say it plainly." No one did. Cowards, all of them. But the room spoke volumes. Vivian left that meeting without slamming the door. But she felt something inside her crack. That night, she was quiet. Emily noticed. "Something happened," she said, curled up next to her on the couch. "The board's pushing back," Vivian said. "You don't have to protect me from this," Emily whispered. "I'm not afraid of being the reason they're uncomfortable." Vivian turned to face her. "It's not that. I'm afraid they'll make me choose again. And I'm afraid that if I lose everything, I'll resent you for it." Emily went still. Not because of what Vivian said, but because she meant it. Vivian's voice broke. "And I don't want to. I don't want that to happen. But I'm scared. I don't know how to let go of everything I've built and not look at you one day and think, was it worth it?" Emily didn't pull away. She didn't cry. She just looked at her and said the most honest thing she'd ever said in her life. "Then don't choose me until you can look me in the eye and mean it." Silence. Vivian's throat tightened. "Emily, no," she said gently. "You don't get to love me halfway anymore. Either I'm the thing you choose with everything, or I'm not the thing at all." It wasn't a threat. It was a boundary. And boundaries, when set with love, are never cruel. They're sacred. Vivian didn't sleep that night. She sat on her balcony, watching the city blink and pulse and breathe. Her empire, her life, her cage. And for the first time, she asked herself something she'd never dared to face. What is all of this worth if the cost is the one person who makes me want to be better? Emily woke alone. She walked into the living room and saw Vivian there, barefoot, in a robe, staring into the skyline. "Hey," she said quietly. Vivian turned. Her eyes were raw, open, unprotected. "I've been asking myself the wrong question," she said. It was never, "What will I lose if I choose you?" It was, "What do I lose if I don't?" Emily took a step forward. Vivian took one too. "I want the life we talked about," Vivian said. "Not just the love. The hard days.
The mess.
The mornings where we fight over coffee. The nights we fall asleep too far apart and reach for each other anyway. I want all of it. With you." Emily's eyes filled, but she didn't break. "That means something has to change." Vivian nodded. "I already told the board. If they want someone they can control, they can find a replacement. But if they want me, the real me, then they accept all of it, including you. And if they don't, then I walk. On my terms. For once in my life." Emily looked at her like she was seeing something she'd been waiting for all along. "Vivian, no more halfway," she whispered. "No more silence." And then, with tears still threatening and a heart that finally understood what love costs and what it's worth, Vivian sank to her knees in front of Emily. "I love you," she said. "Not because it's convenient. Not because I'm scared. I love you because you taught me how." Emily knelt too, hands on her face, foreheads pressed together. "Then get up," she said softly. "We've got a life to build." Vivian Langford had never built anything slowly. Her life was made of sharp decisions, fast wins, high walls, and precise control. But standing in front of Emily Walker, still barefoot, still kneeling, still holding the weight of every silence she'd ever let speak louder than love, she realized the only thing she wanted to build slowly was this. Because she'd already done the hard part. She had stayed.
Fought.
Chosen. Not just once, but every day since the moment Emily walked away. And now Emily was still here. Not broken. Not begging.
Whole.
Honest. Hers. The morning Vivian walked out of that office for the last time, it wasn't with shame. It was with clarity. Her father's messages went unanswered. The board's final vote was split. She could have stayed if she agreed to terms. If she kept things quiet. If she became someone she no longer recognized. But she didn't. She let go. On her terms. For the first time in her life, she walked away from power without losing herself. And somehow it made her more powerful than ever. The headlines were quick. Langford steps down. Empire without a queen. Romance at the root. Vivian didn't flinch. She didn't hide. She didn't explain. She held Emily's hand at every dinner. She kissed her forehead when the cameras tried to catch scandal. She looked them all in the eye and made it clear. She wasn't going anywhere, and neither was Emily. They moved in together 3 weeks later. Not because it was convenient, because it felt natural. Emily's toothbrush beside Vivian's. Vivian's suits sharing space with Emily's jackets. 2 lives folding carefully into one. They didn't rush. Didn't label everything. But they stopped hesitating. They lived. Together. Emily worked freelance, then launched her own creative consulting firm. Vivian took time off. She traveled with Emily, read every book she'd been too busy to touch, cooked terrible pasta, took long walks, and for the first time, learned to exist without performing. The more she slowed down, the more she felt whole. The more she looked at Emily, the more she realized, this wasn't a phase. This wasn't a season. This was home. One night, 6 months later, they sat on a balcony in Tuscany, wine in their hands, legs tangled under a blanket, and silence between them that felt full, not empty. "You miss it?" Emily asked softly. "The company. The power. The version of you that ruled everything." Vivian took a slow sip. "I thought I would. But I don't miss being feared. I don't miss being alone. I don't miss holding everything so tight I couldn't feel anything real. Emily leaned her head on Vivian's shoulder. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you more, Vivian said. You walked away from everything I gave you, and still loved me anyway. I didn't love you for what you gave me, Emily whispered. I loved you for what you were scared to show. And now that you show it, I love you even more. Vivian turned to her. Then marry me. The words came out like air. Effortless, clear, undeniable. Emily blinked. What? Marry me, Vivian said again. Not for the spectacle. Not because it's the next step. Because this, us, feels like everything I never knew I wanted, and I want to keep choosing it every day. With you. Only you. Emily stared at her, eyes burning. You're not even kneeling. I already did once, Vivian teased, brushing a tear off her cheek. This time, I want to stand beside you. Equal. Ready. Emily set down her glass. You don't have a ring.
No.
I have something better. She reached into the pocket of her coat and pulled out a folded page, the first letter she'd ever written to Emily. The one she'd delivered in silence. This is where I started to learn how to love you. I want this to be the promise I make now. Not polished. Not perfect. Just real. Emily took it. Read it again. And again. Then whispered, yes. Vivian didn't cry.
She didn't panic.
She just exhaled, finally. The way you do when you come home after too many years wandering. They married the following spring. No press. No photographers. Just 20 people, a garden in bloom, and the sound of a string quartet playing softly under a pale blue sky. Emily wore lavender. Vivian wore white. They wrote their own vows. Emily's ended with, I love you because you stopped running. Vivian's ended with, I love you because you taught me how to stay. When they kissed, the world didn't stop spinning. It simply aligned. Years later, when people asked how it all started, they'd laugh and say, she kissed me in an office and walked out like she owned the city. Or, she made my life hell until I made hers better. Or, she slapped me with honesty. And I've been grateful ever since. But the real story, the one they told only each other, it started like this. I was tired of the power, and you made me feel like a person again. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you.